Alright, let's talk about something that's got the horror community buzzing, Zach Cregger's upcoming Resident Evil reboot. Now, if you're like me, you've probably been keeping an eye on Cregger ever since Barbarian dropped. That movie was a masterclass in tension and unpredictability, and Weapons only solidified his reputation as a director who's not afraid to push boundaries. But here's the thing, Cregger's calling this Resident Evil reboot his most violent movie yet. And honestly, that's saying something. What makes this really interesting is the way Cregger's approaching the material. Instead of getting bogged down in the lore, the Umbrella Corporation, the T-Virus, all that stuff, he's focusing on what horror does best, survival. Personally, I think this is a bold move. The Resident Evil games are packed with mythology, and fans often expect that in adaptations. But Cregger's stripping it all away, zeroing in on a fast-paced, monster-filled journey. It's like he's saying, I don't care about checking boxes. I care about scaring the hell out of you. And you know what? I'm here for it. One thing that immediately stands out is his description of the violence. You gotta go grotesque, he says. It's gnarly. It's brutal. A very bloody affair. Now, I don't know about you, but that kind of commitment to horror's visceral side is refreshing. In a world where so many franchises play it safe, Cregger's doubling down on the chaos. But here's the kicker, he's not just throwing blood and guts at the screen for shock value. He's weaving in deeply personal themes, much like he did in Weapons. The protagonist, Brian, is dealing with the news of his girlfriend's pregnancy, and the film grapples with the question of whether it's ethical to bring a child into a deteriorating world. That's heavy stuff, and it adds a layer of emotional depth that's rare in this genre. From my perspective, this is where Cregger's genius lies. He's not just making a horror movie, he's making a horror movie with something to say. And that's what elevates it beyond your typical blood-soaked spectacle. But let's not forget the fun factor. Cregger promises the film hits the ground running. We step on the gas at about 8 minutes in and never take our foot off the floor. That kind of relentless pacing is exactly what Resident Evil needs. The games are known for their non-stop action, and it sounds like the movie's delivering on that front. Now, here's where things get interesting. Brian, our protagonist, is described as an everyman with no combat skills. Think about that for a second. In a franchise where characters are often trained soldiers or badass survivors, Cregger's giving us an ordinary guy thrown into an extraordinary nightmare. It's like Frodo in Mordor, as he puts it. And that's a brilliant twist. It makes the horror more relatable, more immediate. You're not watching a hero, you're watching someone who could be you, struggling to survive against impossible odds. What many people don't realize is how this approach could redefine the Resident Evil franchise. By focusing on an original story instead of adapting a specific game, Cregger's free to take risks. He's not tied to fan expectations or canonical constraints. And that's exciting. It means we could get something truly fresh, something that feels both familiar and completely new. But it's also a gamble. Die-hard fans might miss the deep dives into the lore, and that's a valid concern. Personally, I think it's worth the trade-off for a tightly paced, emotionally charged horror experience. If you take a step back and think about it, this reboot is a reflection of where horror is headed. The genre's been evolving, blending visceral scares with deeper thematic exploration. Cregger's not just making a Resident Evil movie, he's making a statement about the state of the world, about parenthood, about survival. And that's what makes this project so compelling. It's not just about the monsters, it's about the human behind the screams. So, here's my final thought. Are you ready for a Resident Evil that's less about the mythology and more about the madness? Personally, I'm all in. But I want to hear from you. Does Cregger's vision excite you, or are you craving something closer to the games? Let me know in the comments. And hey, if you're as hyped as I am, mark your calendars for September 18th, 2026. This is one ride you won't want to miss.